Have you ever been scared? I mean, really, really scared. Are there things that you're constantly in fear of? Well, I live in fear every day. Yes, every single day. And I'm finally here to admit my greatest fear. It's the fear of being me. I fear the judgment and the opinion of others. I fear displeasing those that I love. I fear so many things. But I'm also here to tell you that this fear can be overcome one scary day at a time. I grew up in constant fear. Fear that the waves would come over the beach at night and drown me in my sleep. Fear that I would be beaten up after school every day, like every single day. Fear of trying to understand how to act so that I could be like the others, to try and fit in. Because I did not fit in, so I ran. We run from fear, but fear patiently waits at every single destination to scare us even more. And then I had to ask myself the question, what is fear? That changed everything. And so the quest began to learn, to understand, and hopefully to master fear. But what is fear? Simply put, fear is a frequency. A frequency, the body emits many frequencies, and it's just one of the frequencies inside of the body. But how is fear produced? Well, we capture information from our field. Encyclopedia Britannica tells us our senses capture 11 million pieces of information every second and send them to the brain for processing. The issue is that the conscious brain can only process 50 bits of information per second. Can you imagine 11 million radio stations all playing at the same time? We live in constant information overload, and it's a major source and trigger of fear. But we have to ask the question, where does fear come from? The herd theory teaches us that we must relinquish our individuality so that the herd can survive. We have this thing where we're scared that if we're not like the others, we're going to be pushed out of the herd. See, we have mirror neurons that are constantly trying to keep us in congruence with our environment. Mirror neurons, they're special captors inside of the brain that read our environment and try to harmonize us with the environment. But fear is also a learned response. We fear what our parents fear, what our friends, what our family, what our culture, and what our religion fears. We also fear that something bad is going to happen in the future because of past events. Fear is a learned response. The modern human design flaw is simple. We think too much. But then we have to ask, what is thought? Well, thought's a brain process. We inject perceptions, we inject values into electrical impulses to try to arrive at a conclusion. Well, that conclusion coming from the surplus of information that's running through our brain, well, that creates fear. We live in a heightened alert mode. It's called fight and flight. But I'd like to add in the fear factor. It's called freeze. There's an important part of our brain called the pituitary gland that is constantly assessing these 11 million potential threats to try to see how to prepare the body for them. Because we either fight, we run like hell, or we go deer in the headlights and we freeze. Speaking of freeze, we live in a constant variable state of freeze. The pituitary gland is relentlessly trying to assess these thoughts to see what is fear and what is not fear. That causes a continual release of a toxic chemical in the body called cortisol. Prolonged cortisol exposure has a catastrophic effect on the body. It lowers our pH, and more importantly, it attracts sickness and disease. So, if the brain can't store all of that information, it has to be stored somewhere. Well, that somewhere is the body. I have a question. How many senses are there? Well, according to the research of Dr. Lucy Jane Miller, there are 8 senses and not 5. We have 3 super senses. They are called the vestibular, the proprioceptive, and the interoceptive. The vestibular sense, that tells us where our head is in relation to space and to gravity. Whereas the proprioceptive, well, that gives us information from our joints and our muscles. The interoceptive sense, well, that tells us how our organs are feeling. That's when you know when it's time to pee. Seriously. No, seriously. The senses that we call the super senses, the vestibular, the proprioceptive, and the interoceptive, they not only give us information on how we're feeling, because we always ask each other, so how are you feeling? They give us information on where we are feeling, because it's the where that's going to be important. Where we are feeling gives us the information that we need to extract to get into the mission that we have in my talk tonight. It's about the mastery of fear. How do we master fear? We master on learning how to feel and where to feel. But how do we learn to feel? Well, first of all, you need a body that can hear. Remember, we are a bioelectromagnetic field. We vibrate. The quality of our vibration depends on what we eat, what we drink, and how we breathe. 72% of the body's toxins are expelled through breath, according to Dan Brule. What we drink, well, we are a water-based electrical system. The quality of what we drink actually determines the speed and the quality of the flow of the information. And food, well, food. Food is supposed to be fuel, but too often it's abused to feed emotion. So the quality of who we are depends on what we eat, drink, and breathe. We really are what we eat, drink, and breathe. Shallow breath, acidic food and drink lowers our pH, lowers our frequency. We cannot feel fear properly in an acidic body. That's why it's so important to raise our pH so that we can feel. And the pH, well, that's like the way you test a pool or a spa. So now we have to say, so how do we fix fear? Well, please remember what I'm going to say here. Fear must flow to be freed. Again, fear must flow to be freed. The mastery of fear passes through the 3 F's. You have to feel it first, then you have to find it, and then you can free it. By far, the most important part is feeling the fear. That's the one we're scared of. To feel the fear is to acknowledge that exists. It's to breathe and say the most courageous thing you could ever say. I am scared. Once you have the courage to feel it and feel the fear, now it's time to go find it. Is it in your left big toe? Is it in your right knee or your left elbow? Where is the fear? A super sense scan of your body will find not only how you're feeling, but where you're feeling. And once you find where you're feeling, well, then comes the fun part. It's freeing it. Now, freeing the fear is much more simpler than you would ever believe. Taking a deep breath, acknowledging that the fear exists and feeling it and knowing where it is, all you have to do is breathe into the fear and ask this very simple question. Why am I scared? The answer is going to surprise you. By feeling, finding, and freeing the fear, you fix the fear, I promise you. The aha moment came for me when I realized that the fear that we have is actually of the fear itself. We're in an overload, which means that we're in a freeze, and the freeze is converted to fear. The fear is just an alert of the overload, and by breathing into it and by doing the process, you can release the fear and let it flow. The real problem is when we're scared and we avoid the fear. The herd theory taught me that I was so scared because I just wanted to be like everybody else. I was scared to be me. By learning the 3 F's, I learned to let the fear flow so that I could start to learn to be me. And even though every day is still scary, I trust the process, I breathe into the fear, I let it flow so that I can be me. So my challenge to you is very, very simple. Feel it, find it, and free it. The freeze is preventing you from loving you, from being you, and most importantly, from you being able to share your most beautiful gift of you to this world. By letting the fear flow and breathing into it, all you have to do is tell yourself that you're safe. Why? Because this world needs you right now more than ever. So please be you. Nobody else can.